Welcome to the deep dive, where we basically take all the fascinating stuff you send our way, all those sources, and we kind of boil them down into these pure, concentrated nuggets of insight. Just for you.
It's like an express lane to knowledge.
Exactly. A fast track to understanding. And today, you sent us something particularly, well, spicy. It's this document, Top 5 Worst Seasons of American Horror Story, compiled and annotated by someone named Mary Girl Moody.
And it has heavily, heavily annotated. This is going to be your deep dive into her deep dive.
Absolutely. We're going to be exploring why these seasons, at least according to Mary Girl Moody, landed with a thud. But we're also going to look at some of her more personal takes, because she's got a lot to say.
Oh, she does. And she doesn't hold back, which is what makes this document so fun to unpack.
Right, because worst is kind of subjective, isn't it? Like, what makes one person scream in terror might make another yawn.
Totally. Like some people love slow burn horror, others want jump scares every 5 seconds.
So we're not here to say definitively whether these seasons are good or bad.
No, this is about Mary Girl Moody's specific gripes.
Exactly. And trust me, when we get to double feature and NYC, things get very interesting.
Oh, very interesting, because Mary Girl Moody, she's got very strong feelings about certain characters and plot points.
So buckle up. Let's get started with the season Mary Girl Moody put at the very bottom of her list. American Horror Story. Double feature, which is really 2 stories, Red Tide and Death Valley.
Right. Double feature. Well, it's safe to say this one left a pretty strong impression on Mary Girl Moody.
To put it mildly. Now, the document lays out a couple of core problems with the season. Like, a big one was the jarring disconnect between the 2 parts. Red Tide and Death Valley felt more like 2 completely separate things rather than, 2 halves of a whole.
Exactly. They didn't flow together seamlessly, which kind of goes against the whole point of having an anthology format, right? You want those separate narratives to still feel connected somehow.
Totally. Plus, Death Valley specifically got a lot of flack for its characters.
They felt a little thin, right? Like underdeveloped. And the ending felt rushed, like they were just trying to wrap things up quickly.
Yeah, like they ran out of time. And speaking of running out of patience, Mary Girl Moody does not mince words in her notes. She literally writes, and I quote, "I hate AHS Red Tide Death Valley," like exclamation points galore.
You can just feel the rage emanating from the page.
It's like this season personally offended her.
It's pretty amazing.
But what's interesting is that her anger is super specific.
Yeah.
Like, she's really fixated on what happens to Doris, the writer's wife in Red Tide, the one who takes the black pill, and, well, things go downhill pretty fast.
Yes, Doris. It's like Mary Girl Moody really felt for her, felt like she got a raw deal. And she was also really annoyed that, like, Harry and Alma, they basically get away with, well, everything.
Like they didn't face any real consequences for their, morally questionable choices.
Right. Mary Girl Moody's not having it. It's like she's holding these characters accountable for their actions.
It's like watching a very intense morality play unfold in her notes. And then there's the whole tonal shift when Death Valley kicks in. Like, bam, suddenly we're in black and white retro sci-fi land.
Talk about a whiplash. It goes from this, claustrophobic, creepy New England town with, like, vampire vibes.
Yeah, to aliens and government conspiracies. And Mary Girl Moody calls this shift jarring and not appreciated, which honestly seems to sum up how a lot of fans felt.
It's like they just hit the reset button in the middle of the season.
Completely. And remember how we talked about how those 2 halves should feel connected?
Right, like part of a larger whole.
This is the opposite of that. And this is where it ties back to you, the listener, because tonal consistency, even in an anthology series, it's super important. It helps create a more immersive experience.
A smoother ride, so to speak. You don't want to be constantly jolted out of the story.
Exactly. And Mary Girl Moody makes another good point in her notes. She suggests that instead of pivoting to this whole new story with Death Valley, they could have just stuck with the Red Tide world and delved deeper into some of the characters we met there.
Ooh, like Karen, the struggling singer. She had such a tragic arc.
Or the chemist, with all his mysterious concoctions.
Imagine the possibilities. I think a lot of viewers, including Mary Girl Moody, felt like there was some untapped potential there.
Totally. Like, what if we'd gotten more backstory on the chemist,
Yeah.
What made him tick? What led him to create those pills?
That's what makes anthology storytelling so interesting, right? These little threads you can pick up and explore.
Totally. But, even amidst all her, shall we say, passionate dislike, Mary Girl Moody does acknowledge that Red Tide had its moment.
It wasn't all bad.
Right. She does give props to the initial premise, the whole idea of these black pills unlocking creativity, but at a terrible cost.
Right. And the performances, especially Lily Rabe and Frances Conroy, they were fantastic.
totally captivating. And she does mention that the atmosphere, at least at the beginning, was really effective.
It had that creepy, unsettling vibe that AHS does so well.
It did.
Yeah.
So, even in a season that she ultimately hated, there were still things to appreciate.
It reminds us that even in seasons that, as a whole, don't work, there can still be these glimmers of brilliance.
Exactly. Now, there's also some interesting behind-the-scenes stuff that Mary Girl Moody dug up. Apparently, the original plan was for Double Feature to be a trilogy, like 3 separate stories. But then COVID hit, and they had to condense it down to 2.
Ah, that makes sense. The pandemic really threw a wrench into a lot of productions.
It did. And there's this tidbit that the alien storyline in Death Valley was actually inspired by real-world UFO conspiracy theories. Like, they did some research on that stuff.
Wow, that's fascinating. It's like they're blurring the lines between fiction and reality.
And there was even this whole idea for Lily Rabe to play Marilyn Monroe, but that got scrapped. So, yeah, they were definitely going for something ambitious, even if, well, it didn't quite come together for a lot of people.
Right. And it makes you wonder, what would the season have looked like if they had had the time and resources to fully realize their initial vision?
It's a big what if.
Tell me.
Okay, moving on to the number 4 spot on Mary Girl Moody's list of doom. AHS, NYC. And this one sparked a very different kind of reaction from her.
Oh, yeah, much more emotional.
The document points to a few reasons why this season ended up in the doghouse.
Oh.
For one, the pacing was noticeably slower, like way more subdued than what we're used to from AHS.
It wasn't as in your face, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it was a noticeable departure.
And it shied away from the, overt supernatural stuff. There were still horror elements, but they were more psychological, more grounded in reality.
It's a different flavor of horror, for sure.
Right. And it felt like there were too many storylines happening at once, and they didn't always mesh well. Like, it felt a little disjointed.
A bit messy, maybe?
Yeah, like they were trying to juggle too many balls at once. And some people felt like it leaned more towards historical drama than horror. Like it was using the backdrop of 1980s New York to explore some real-world issues.
Which can be really effective, but it can also alienate viewers who are expecting something more purely terrifying.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting. Mary Girl Moody's reaction to this season is, well, it's intense. She writes, and again I'm quoting directly, "Personally, Mary Girl Moody feels traumatized by season 11. It happened 2 years ago, and I still cry when I think of the season."
Wow. That's pretty heavy.
Right. Like, this season really got to her on a deep level.
It's like she's still processing the emotional impact 2 years later.
And her reaction seems to be centered around her interpretation of the Big Daddy storyline.
Ah, yes. Big Daddy, that was the whole thing.
It was. So, like a lot of viewers, Mary Girl Moody initially thought Big Daddy was, a literal serial killer stalking gay men in New York, which obviously is terrifying.
Right, it played into those very real fears that existed at the time.
Exactly. But then it's revealed that Big Daddy isn't a real person. It's more like a symbolic representation of the AIDS crisis, which, on the surface, that could be a powerful way to explore that tragic part of history.
Right, to give it a physical, almost monstrous form.
But Mary Girl Moody felt like it was misleading. Like it tricked her into feeling a certain way and then pulled the rug out from under her. And she specifically contrasts it with the show Pose, which also dealt with the AIDS crisis, but in a way that she found much more, respectful.
More nuanced, maybe.
Yeah, and ultimately more meaningful. So, yeah, it seems like NYC just really rubbed her the wrong way and left a lasting emotional scar.
It's a good reminder that when you're dealing with real-world tragedies, especially something as sensitive as the AIDS crisis, you have to be really careful. You don't want to exploit that pain or trivialize it.
Absolutely. Now, even with her very strong negative reaction, Mary Girl Moody does list some of the aspects of NYC that were praised by others, like the atmosphere.
It really captured that gritty, almost oppressive feeling of 1980s New York.
Yeah, and the cinematography was really striking. And, it tackled some relevant social themes.
And the performances, some of them were really, really good.
They were. And some people actually appreciated the more psychological, symbolic approach to horror.
Oh.
So yeah, even though it was divisive, it definitely had its strengths.
It shows that a season can be deeply flawed, even problematic for some, and still have artistic merit.
Totally. Oh, and here's some quick facts about NYC. It's the only AHS season without any supernatural elements, like at all. It's completely grounded in reality.
Interesting. It really was trying to do something different.
And it got a super mixed response from critics. Like some loved it, some hated it.
It was a polarizing one for sure.
And it was loosely inspired by this controversial movie from the 80s called Cruising.
Oh, I've heard of that one. It caused quite a stir when it came out.
And it's the first season that doesn't seem to be connected to the larger AHS universe. Like there are no Easter eggs or returning characters. It really stands on its own.
So a real outlier in a lot of ways.
Okay, let's move on to number 3. AHS, Apocalypse. Now this one's interesting because Mary Girl Moody's opinion on it actually evolved over time.
Oh, how so?
So her initial reaction when she first watched it wasn't great, but then she rewatched it and her opinion actually changed. She started to see it in a new light.
That's interesting. Makes you wonder what clicked for her on that second viewing.
Right. Maybe there was something she missed the first time around. But anyway, the main criticisms of Apocalypse, both from her and from fans in general, were that it relied too much on nostalgia. Specifically, the whole Coven crossover.
Yes. The Return of the Witches.
Which, on the surface, that sounds awesome. Like, who doesn't love the witches?
Exactly. It was a huge fan service moment.
But some people felt like it overshadowed the actual story of Apocalypse. Like, they were so focused on bringing back these beloved characters that they didn't give the new storyline enough room to breathe.
It's a tricky balance, isn't it? You want to give the fans what they want, but you don't want it to feel cheap or forced.
Totally. And this is something you, the listener, can keep in mind when you're thinking about any kind of sequel or reboot or crossover. Like, does it feel organic? Does it add something new to the story? Or is it just rehashing old ground for the sake of nostalgia?
Good question. It's all about finding that sweet spot between honoring the past and creating something fresh and exciting.
Exactly. Now, there were also criticisms about the pacing. Some felt like it was rushed. And there were some inconsistencies with the whole apocalypse and time travel logic.
Which, fair enough, when you're dealing with those kinds of high concept ideas, it's easy to trip up.
It is. And Mary Girl Moody had a very specific gripe about Michael Langdon, the Antichrist. She was initially excited to see how they'd portray him, but she ended up being disappointed. She felt like he came across as more of a whiny brat than a truly menacing villain.
Ouch. That's a pretty harsh critique of the main antagonist.
It is. And it makes sense, right? Because in horror, you need a villain who's genuinely scary, someone who poses a real threat.
Right. Otherwise, the stakes just aren't high enough.
Exactly. But, wasn't all bad. Mary Girl Moody's notes do point out some of the positive aspects of Apocalypse, like obviously seeing all those iconic characters back was a huge draw for a lot of fans.
Especially Jessica Lange. She's such a legend.
Right. And Cody Fern as Michael. Well, at least initially, he was pretty terrifying.
He did have that creepy charisma.
And there were some truly epic moments, like the witches returning to fight Michael. That was just chef's kiss.
It's those big, dramatic moments that AHS does so well.
Totally. So even though it wasn't a perfect season, it definitely had its highlights.
It shows you how even a flawed season can still have these moments of brilliance that resonate with viewers.
Exactly. Oh, and some interesting behind-the-scenes info. Apparently, there were a bunch of deleted scenes that would fleshed out Michael's backstory a bit more, and the original plan was for Cordelia to die much earlier in the season.
Oh, wow. That would have been a completely different story.
Right, and there were some major rewrites during production, which, might explain some of the inconsistencies people noticed.
Yeah, it's always fascinating to see how these creative decisions get made. Sometimes things change drastically during the process.
All right, let's move on to the number 2 spot on Mary Girl Moody's list. AHS Roanoke. Now, this season really went for it in terms of style.
It took some big swings, that's for sure.
It did, and Mary Girl Moody had a unique reaction to it. But first, let's talk about the criticisms. A lot of people found the whole documentary format jarring. Like, it wasn't what they were expecting from AHS.
Right, it felt different, almost experimental.
And then halfway through the season, it switches to found footage, which, again, was disorienting for some viewers.
Like they were already thrown off by the documentary style, and then they threw another curveball.
Exactly. And some people felt like the characters weren't as well developed as in previous seasons, and some were just straight up unlikable.
Which, can make it hard to get invested in the story.
Totally. And Roanoke lacked that over-the-top theatrical quality that a lot of people associate with AHS.
It was more stripped down, more gritty.
But here's where Mary Girl Moody's take gets interesting. She actually enjoyed watching this season late at night, like in the dark. She found it genuinely scary.
Interesting. Maybe the rawness of it, the stripped-down style, actually enhanced the scares for her.
Maybe. And get this, she was really into the origin story of Skavak, the first Supreme. She even writes, quote, "Sexy Shathak."
Oh my, well, that's certainly a memorable reaction.
Right. It's like what others found off-putting, she found, well, appealing. So yeah, Roanoke definitely got under her skin. But in a good way, apparently.
It just goes to show how subjective our tastes are, especially when it comes to horror. What creeps one person out might totally enthrall another.
And this is where it ties back to you, the listener, because sometimes it's fun to step outside your comfort zone and explore those things that might initially seem off-putting. You never know, you might discover a whole new genre or subgenre that you end up loving.
Exactly. It's all about expanding your horizons and challenging your preconceived notions.
Totally. Now, the document does acknowledge some of the widely praised aspects of Roanoke, like the horror was intense. Some people found it truly disturbing.
It had some really gruesome moments.
It did. And Lana Winters from Asylum makes a comeback, which was a nice surprise.
Always love to see familiar faces.
Right. And the deaths, some of them were really creative, like the way they used the whole colonial setting and mythology. And you got to give them props for trying something different.
Even if it didn't totally work for everyone, it was ambitious. It pushed the boundaries of what AHS could be.
Totally. Okay, some fun facts about Roanoke. It was the first season without the opening credits, like those iconic visuals and that creepy theme song. Gone.
Wow, that's a bold move.
Right. And it got the lowest ratings of any AHS season at the time, which, maybe that's because it was such a departure from the norm. People didn't know what to make of it.
It's possible. Change can be scary for some viewers.
It can. Oh, there's a little Easter egg in there. The Mott family from Roanoke are actually related to the Mott family from Asylum. It's a subtle connection to the larger AHS universe.
I love those little nods to previous seasons. It makes you feel like it's all part of this bigger, interconnected tapestry.
And they kept things super secret during filming. Like, nobody knew what the season was about until it premiered, which, added to the mystery and intrigue.
It definitely generated a lot of buzz.
Okay, now for the final stop on our Merry Girl Moody guided tour of AHS Hell. Number 5, AHS, 1984. And this is where things take a delightful turn, because unlike the previous seasons, Merry Girl Moody absolutely loved this one.
Wait, really? I thought this season was pretty divisive.
Oh, it definitely was. But Merry Girl Moody is in the pro-1984 camp. In fact, she writes, and I'm quoting again, "Personally, Merry Girl Moody loved AHS 1984.
Wow, okay, so she's going against the grain here. I'm curious to hear why she liked it so much.
Right. So she loved the characters, the inclusion of ghosts, the copious amounts of blood and violence, and she's a huge Leslie Jordan fan. She thought he was great in it. And overall, she calls the season fantastic and underrated.
Okay, so she clearly had a blast watching it.
Oh, for sure. And what's funny is that some of the things she liked were the very things that other people criticize, like the 80s slasher tropes. She ate that up.
Yeah.
And the whole supernatural twist in the second half, loved it.
So it really just goes to show how personal taste plays such a huge role in how we receive these stories. What one person sees as a flaw, another sees as a feature.
Exactly. And it reminds you, the listener, that it's okay to like things that other people don't. You don't have to follow the crowd. If something brings you joy, embrace it.
Absolutely. You do you.
Now, even people who weren't crazy about 1984 tended to agree that it had some redeeming qualities. Like, the retro aesthetic was spot on. They really nailed that 80s vibe.
The costumes, the music, the whole look and feel.
It was a visual treat.
Yeah.
And they created some really memorable characters like Donna and Brooke.
They were great.
And at least in the first half of the season, it really captured that classic slasher movie feel.
All those tropes and cliches done in a fun way.
Exactly. And some of the characters actually had some surprisingly touching redemption arcs.
Yeah, they went through some real growth and change.
Now, some things about 1984 did spark debate. Like the way they portrayed real-life serial killers, especially Richard Ramirez. Some people felt like that was a bit exploitative.
Yeah, that's a tricky line to walk. You don't want to glorify these horrific figures, but you also want to stay true to the story you're telling.
Right. And then there was a whole supernatural twist in the second half. Some people loved it, some hated it. It definitely divided the fan base.
I guess it depends on what you're looking for in an AHS season. Some people prefer the more grounded, realistic horror, while others embrace the over-the-top supernatural elements.
Totally. Oh, and this was the first season without either Evan Peters or Sarah Paulson in a leading role. Like, those two are AHS royalty.
Right. They've been in pretty much every season, so it was definitely a noticeable absence.
And it was the shortest season, with only 9 episodes.
Maybe that contributed to it feeling a bit rushed.
Maybe. So there you have it. A deep dive into Mary Girl Moody's top 5 worst seasons of American Horror Story. What's so fascinating about her document is that it shows just how subjective these kinds of lists are. What she hated, others might have loved, and vice versa.
Exactly. And it highlights how personal our experiences with art can be. What resonates with one person might not resonate with another, and that's okay.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, it's about finding the things that speak to you, the stories that move you, the characters that you connect with. And sometimes those things might not be what everyone else is raving about.
Exactly. It's about trusting your own instincts and forming your own opinions.
So considering Mary Girl Moody's very strong and sometimes contradictory reactions to these seasons, it makes you wonder, what does it say about our relationship with storytelling, especially in a genre like horror, where our personal fears and anxieties can really color our experience?
It's a great question, and it makes you think, does a bad season still have value if it resonates with you on a personal level, or if it pushes boundaries and tries something different, even if it doesn't quite stick the landing?
Exactly. And that's something for you, the listener, to ponder. We encourage you to think about your own experiences with these seasons or any other piece of media that sparked debate. What makes something work for you? What turns you off? And ultimately, whose opinion do you value the most? Your own, of course.
Because at the end of the day, the most important critic is you.
Okay, so you're here because you want the inside scoop, the quick takeaways on interesting topics, and you want it fast.
Exactly. And today, we're diving deep into American Horror Story.
Specifically, we're looking at it through one particular fan's eyes, her personal ranking.
Yep, we've got Mary Girl Moody's top 5 favorite AHS seasons, based on her video and the transcript she provided.
Now, this isn't like the definitive critical ranking, right? It's very personal.
Totally. It's one fan's passion, which actually gives us a really interesting look at what makes certain seasons click with people.
So our goal here is pretty straightforward. We're going to unpack her top 5 picks.
We want to figure out why these specific seasons resonated so much with her, what makes them stand out.
And hopefully give you a condensed but really detailed look at these particular installments of the show.
Right. Let's jump in with number 5, and this one's a bit of a curveball.
Oh, how so?
Well, Mary Girl Moody picked her own fan-made season. It's called AHS Mortuary.
Wait, she wrote it herself and put it in her top 5.
She did.
Okay, wow. That's pretty bold. You got to admire the confidence, I guess.
That's passion.
So tell me about Mortuary. What's the setup?
Okay, so it's set in 1981, small town called Morningvale. Very atmospheric, you know.
Got it, 1981. And who are the main players?
You've got these siblings, Lily and Tom Hart. They run the town mortuary. Seems normal enough. Yeah.
But there's always a but in AHS.
Right. The twist is they're secretly aliens.
Aliens! Seriously, running a mortuary.
Yep. And they're harvesting human hearts.
Whoa. Okay. Aliens harvesting hearts in an 80s mortuary. That is quite a concept.
It's definitely unique.
What else is going on in this Morningvale place? Sounds like trouble.
Oh, yeah. There's a werewolf killer on the loose. They call him the Casket Man.
A werewolf. Okay, mixing genres here.
Totally. Plus, there's mysterious alien tech involved, obviously murder cover-ups, some psychic relatives popping up, and apparently the whole town is just full of secrets.
Sounds like classic AHS, even if it's fan-made. Lots of threads. Any specific characters we should know?
Well, there's Maya Bowen, a widow who's sort of finding her strength, her daughter Paula, who's skeptical about things. Then there's Sheriff Sally Kennedy investigating the Casket Man, and her deputy Nancy Crane, who's very observant.
Okay, the local law enforcement.
And get this in a cool nod to the main series, Lana Winters apparently makes an appearance.
No way, Lana Winters. In the fan-made season.
That's what she wrote in. Bringing back Lana definitely connects to the wider universe, you know? Adds some weight.
That's actually pretty clever. Yeah. So what's Mary Girl Moody's own verdict on her creation? Why number 5?
She just sounds really excited about it. Calls it creepy, twisty, tragic. You can tell it means a lot to her.
Well, credit for the creativity, for sure. Okay, let's move to number 4. This one's official canon, AHS Freak Show.
Right, Freak Show. A visually striking season, but also really tough emotionally.
Yeah, it could be brutal. Where's it set again?
1952, Jupiter, Florida. It centers on one of the last traveling freak shows in America.
Led by Jessica Lange as Elsa Mars. Phenomenal performance.
Absolutely. Elsa's dreaming of Hollywood fame, but beneath all the spectacle, there's a lot of darkness and pain.
That's putting it mildly. It really dug into how society treats people who are different, didn't it?
It really did. And Mary Girl Moody pointed out some specific, really disturbing storylines that stuck with her.
Like what? I mean, there was a lot to choose from.
There was Dandy Mott, remember him? The rich, spoiled psycho who starts killing the performers.
Ugh, Dandy. Pure entitlement turned murderous. He was terrifying in his own way.
Totally. And then Twisty the Clown's backstory, how he went from this sweet guy to, well, Twisty. So tragic.
Yeah, that was rough. And Elsa's own past wasn't exactly cheerful either.
You're kidding. The whole reveal about her legs being amputated in a snuff film. Just shocking.
Horrifying. And what about Penny, the lizard girl? That whole situation.
Yeah, Mary Girl Moody mentioned that specifically. Penny and the others getting revenge on her awful father, tattooing him, the mutilation.
It was visceral. Hard to watch, but
Yeah.
you kind of understood the rage.
Exactly. It showed that breaking point. The season wasn't just about supernatural scares. It was about human cruelty.
So Mary Girl Moody's overall take on Freak Show.
She called it a heartbreaker, said it was sad, powerful, praised the unforgettable performances. It clearly hit her hard emotionally.
Yeah, it stays with you. Okay, number 3. This is often cited as one of the most intense. AHS Asylum.
Oh, absolutely. Asylum has that reputation for a reason. Mary Girl Moody definitely agrees it's maybe the most disturbing season.
It just threw everything at you, didn't it? Inside Briarcliff Manor.
Everything. Demonic possession, aliens, serial killers like Bloody Face, abuse of power from the staff. It was relentless.
Briarcliff itself felt like a character, just this oppressive, awful place.
Good point. That sense of confinement, of dread,
Yeah.
classic psychological horror fuel.
What specific character arcs did Mary Girl Moody focus on for Asylum?
She mentioned Kit Walker, accused of being bloody face but innocent, and his strange connection to, aliens, maybe? It was ambiguous.
Right, the alien subplot was wild. And Sister Jude.
Sister Jude, played by Jessica Lange again. Her transformation was incredible. From this really cruel, rigid nun to someone who finds a kind of peace, even forgiveness.
A really complex arc. And Lana Winters, of course.
Yeah.
Her journey was central.
Definitely. Lana's story. Starting as this ambitious but kind of timid journalist, getting trapped, enduring horrible abuse, and then emerging as this incredibly strong figure who takes down her abuser. So powerful.
Such a defining role for Sarah Paulson.
Totally. And Mary Girl Moody also highlighted the background tragedy, how many patients in Briarcliff were just stuck there unjustly. People society wanted to forget.
Yeah, that added a layer of real-world horror to it all.
Exactly.
So how did she sum up Asylum's impact?
She called it brutal, emotional, layered, said it's a season that really sticks with you.
No argument there. Okay, we're into the top 2. Number 2 is AHS 1984.
Yep, 1984. And this was such a shift in tone from Asylum, wasn't it?
Oh, completely. It felt lighter, almost. Playful. In a very bloody way.
Exactly. Mary Girl Moody called it fun, a total tribute to classic slasher flicks. Set at Camp Redwood, the perfect summer camp nightmare location.
It really leaned into the 80s slasher vibe. Do you think that self-awareness, playing with the tropes, made it work better for some people?
That's a good question. Maybe it lowers the defenses, makes the jump scares hit harder, or maybe it's just enjoyable nostalgia. She definitely loved the style.
What did she say about the look and feel?
She mentioned the lush cinematography, saturated color, and blood-soaked beauty. It was definitely visually striking.
It really popped on screen, and the plot had some great twists.
Oh, yeah, the big one. Margaret Booth being the real killer all along, framing Mr. Jingles.
That was a great reveal. Completely turned things upside down.
Totally. And Mary Girl Moody pointed out just how many killers were running around. You had the Night Stalker, Mr. Jingles back from the dead, Margaret herself, plus all the vengeful ghosts.
It was killer overload. But somehow it still felt.
Lighthearted and over the top, as she put it. Despite the body count, it didn't take itself too seriously.
Right. It balanced the horror with this almost campy humor sometimes. Any standout characters for her?
She loved Montana, Trevor, and Brooke, called them hilarious, sexy, and addictive to watch.
They were a fun group, and Angelica Ross joined this season, right?
Yes, as Nurse Rita, though that had its own twist. Mary Girl Moody was super impressed, said Angelica Ross slayed the part.
She really did. She was fantastic. So the key to 1984's success in this ranking?
According to Mary Girl Moody, it was that lack of self-seriousness. Just pure, fun, stylish slasher entertainment with a wink.
Makes sense. Okay, here we are.
Right.
The number 1 spot. Mary Girl Moody's absolute favorite season of American Horror Story is?
Hotel.
Hotel. Season 5.
That's her top pick.
Yeah.
And she paints this picture of, well, everything. Ghosts, vampires, fashion, revenge, trauma, glam, and blood on satin sheets.
Blood on satin sheets.
Yeah.
Very evocative. All happening inside the Hotel Cortez.
Exactly. And a huge part of that was Lady Gaga as the Countess.
An iconic performance. People were skeptical maybe, but she delivered.
Oh, yeah. Mary Girl Moody says Gaga ate this role, absolutely devoured it.
What specific moments from Hotel did she highlight?
She loved that line. Your boy has a jawline for days.
Yes. Classic Countess.
And that amazing revenge kill montage with the Countess and Donovan set to that She Wants Revenge song, Tear You Apart. So stylish.
Oh, that scene was incredible. Pure style and violence. The whole season had that vibe, didn't it? Glamour and danger.
Totally. She also mentioned James March, the hotel's original owner and builder, played by Evan Peters, the sadistic ghost with his twisted dinner parties.
He was fantastic. So creepy. And Liz Taylor.
Ah, Liz. Dennis O'Hare's character. Mary Girl Moody called her arc pure beauty. Such a standout performance and story.
Agreed. Just wonderful. Any other highlights?
The whole tragic love story between the Countess and Valentino, spanning decades, and Miss Evers, the maid, with her sort of silent, unrequited love for James March.
So many interwoven stories all trapped in that hotel. It really blended a lot of horror elements, too.
It did. You had the vampire element, the ghosts haunting the place, the serial killer reunion. Mary Girl Moody mentioned the variety.
And other characters like Tristan, Sally, Iris, Donovan.
A memorable ensemble.
Definitely. She listed them all, saying the season was just packed with engaging figures.
So what ultimately pushed Hotel to #1 for her? What was the final word?
She described it as lush, dark, emotional, stylish, called it the ultimate vibe. It seems like that specific, decadent, moody atmosphere just captured everything she loves about AHS.
Okay, so there we have it. That was quite a journey through Mary Girl Moody's top 5 American Horror Story seasons.
Yeah, from fan-made alien morticians to glamorous vampires, covering freak shows, asylums, and slasher camps along the way. It really shows the range of the show, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And like we said at the start, and as the source makes clear, this is just one person's perspective, her personal favorites. Right. Your list might look completely different, and that's kind of the point. Horror is so subjective.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to chew on. Looking at this specific diverse list, from folk horror vibes in Mortuary, to the sheer intensity of Asylum, to the fun of 1984, and the style of Hotel. What does that variety tell us about horror itself?
What elements truly grab you? Is it the scares, the characters, the themes, the style, the emotional punch? What makes a horror story lodge itself in your brain and become truly unforgettable? Something to think about?
You guys are the best. Thank you again for watching, and beware of our girl, Sexy Scathach.